Online activism is basically use of internet-based communication mediums like social media, digital publishing outlets, etc. to either raise awareness or support a cause someone believes in. Online activism mainly uses social media platforms because most people are on it, like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. But they also use digital publishing platforms and online petitions to bring about change.
I think a lot of people have also moved away from traditional, as Facebook and Twitter have gotten increasing public scrutiny over their moderation of free speech or general sort of freedom guidelines for their platforms. There have been a lot of people who've moved towards freer platforms, one could call. So 4chan and 8chan are great examples of anonymous bulletins that have been used. Well, one wouldn't call it activism because it is a very dangerous organization called QAnon in the United States, which allegedly Donald Trump has tacitly supported, which is a problem. But QAnon is a great example of using alternate sources of media because they quickly realized that look, we can't really mobilize people on Facebook as easily as we could because Facebook's getting more and more sort of accountable because Mark Zuckerberg is becoming more and more of a sort of centerpiece for what's wrong with social media. So there are these other sort of fringe platforms that are gaining prominence, but especially for people who want to engage with on things that are not spoken about. So neo-Nazi movements, violence against women, a lot of these things which are spoken about in hushed circles and want its own support base, they are moving to fringe platforms which are anonymous, and you really can't moderate those platforms as easily or with the same level of accountability that you would with the sort of traditional Facebook, Twitter, etc.
In my view, there are only two types of online activism. One is to raise awareness, which is when people share a lot of information about causes they believe in and try to educate their social media circles about this cause so that they also start supporting a cause. Number two is social media activism that translates into real life actions. So this could be mobilizing protests, asking people to sign petitions, asking people to send RTI requests, etc.
Well, I think it's extremely relevant. And look, digital networks or the virtual world as a whole has really sort of shaped social movements, mobilization, and getting people together. And I think we could look at the Arab Spring as a great sort of example to really see the tangible effects that, however you want to call it, online activism or sort of online mobilization had, because we saw the Arab Spring really sort of proliferate, or the message of sort of fighting authoritarian regimes kind of proliferate and sort of spread through the Middle East in the Arab Spring. Even more recently with the Hong Kong protests, or even closer to home, we're seeing Dalit violence, caste-based violence becoming a bigger part of sort of public consciousness because of online activism. And I think it's extremely important.
With the emerging trend of this generation moving on to online platforms and tending to ignore more traditional media outlets like TV, radio, and newspaper, online activism becomes more and more important to let people know what is happening around them. Especially in this generation, online activism and online activists know exactly how to tap into social media users and their shorter attention spans and let them know what is going on and why they should care about something.
It'll be extremely wrong to say that online activism isn't important. I think in the contemporary world, it's probably supremely important. And what probably in 2011, what was just beginning to sort of see a prominence today, and I think exacerbated by COVID-19, I think the world order that's kind of currently being formed as we speak is going to have a bigger role than ever for online and digital activism. Yeah. I think probably the biggest positive of online activism is it blurs boundaries, right? Socio demographic boundaries, cultural boundaries, linguistic boundaries to some extent. I mean, you're seeing essentially, look, globalization as a process has created winners and losers. We all know that. But what the sort of online space has done, and with social media sort of permeating right into rural pockets in India, we're a sort of mobile first like consumer market. I think 67% of us consume news through social media, through sort of the phone. So there's a humongous sort of benefit of mobilization through social media. So let's take George Floyd, for example. Everyone knows about the George Floyd incident. I mean, Black Lives Matter is not a new phenomenon. It's not something that just came up in 2020. Black Lives Matter has been a sort of, or the calls against systemic racism in the United States has been a consistent problem that has been voiced repeatedly. But the idea that the video of police brutality in 2020 really sort of became this clarion call for fighting against systemic racism, not just in the United States, but world over, it really sort of tells you that today messages of sort of shared grievance, right? Because there's something quite powerful about you and I. You're in another continent, I'm in another continent, but we have the same struggles. Today, the online space gives us a way to connect and sort of feel for each other. So there's some humongous benefits to that. I think that the sort of massive outrage on Black Lives Matter in 2020 is a great example of how people could come together to fight something. But the problem is that with this sort of positive aspect of mobilization and getting people together from different walks of life and around the world, there's a dark side to that, right? Because today we don't really agree on what truth is anymore. There isn't an idea of objective truth, really. Before social media or before the online space became so prominent, I mean, there was a gatekeeper function that the media would play. So you would trust certain media sources, you would trust certain places to get your information. Today, that's not the case. What you may consider activism, I could consider inciting terrorism, because we really don't have consensus on what any of this means. Misinformation, hate speech, fake news, you have all of these dark sort of aspects of social media, which all sort of come under one humongous umbrella, which is your version of truth doesn't match mine. And you can always find facts and evidence to support your version of the truth. I can always find facts to support my version of the truth. So we essentially operate in what many people call echo chambers, where I only hear things I want to hear, and that confirmation bias, as we call it in social psychology, it plays a huge role. So the flip side of online activism, it often only reaches people who want to hear you, and the people who disagree with you will already sort of relegate you to be a anti-national or a terrorist, or there are so many words that we have to. So that's probably the pro and the con. So it gets people together, but it also divides people, because it divides you based on what you agree, and what I agree are never the same. So I think it's a complicated and untenable relationship which we need to fix.